Good afternoon, everyone. My name, for those of you who've not yet met me, is Stephanie McGregor. I'm part of the career planning team at the City University of New York School of Law, otherwise known as CUNY School of Law. I, along with my colleagues today, are so very pleased to have this opportunity to partner with the New Jersey Judiciary Office to bring you this virtual lunch program, Meet Your Employer. Today, we're highlighting the New Jersey Postgraduate Judicial Clerkship Program, which is an exciting law clerk opportunity open to recent graduates. Today, you'll hear from Judge Joan Bedrin Murray, Judge Harold Fuller-Love Jr. You'll also hear from Kevin Harmon of the New Jersey Judiciary Central Office, and also from recent law clerks, two recent law clerks. We have an exciting lineup, and after the presentations, you'll have an opportunity to ask your questions. So let's get started. Thank you so much, Kevin, for putting this together.
Stephanie, thank you for having us. I just want to confirm, can everyone see my screen, Judicial Clerkship Program Seminar?
Yes, great.
Okay, all right. Thank you again for having us today. Warm welcome to all the CUNY Law students out there and school administrators that have made time in their busy schedules to join us for today's program. All right, so again, my name is Kevin Harmon. I'll be your moderator. I'm a senior talent acquisition specialist in our HR placement division, and I help coordinate our law clerk program with New Jersey Judiciary Courts. Before I kick things off with some introductions of our panel, let's go over a little housekeeping items and an overview of New Jersey Courts one-of-a-kind clerkship program. So the webinar will be approximately 1 hour long. We will have opportunities, like Stephanie said, throughout the webinar for you to ask live questions. So if you do have a question, use the raise your hand feature, and I'll try to call on everyone in order which they were raised. If you don't want to ask your question live, please send it through the Zoom Q&A feature. Try not to use the chat feature if you can. And if we don't have a chance or the opportunity to answer all your questions during the webinar, we will follow up after the event. Let's see. So, and this is important, after the webinar, I'm going to go over some key dates in terms of our current clerkship hiring for the 2022-23 term for our Rising 3L students, and also touch on the application process schedule for the 2023-2024 term. I can't believe we're getting to that point already, which current 2L students will be applying for. So stick around for that. All right, so New Jersey's court system is recognized and respected nationally for our progressive and innovative work. Each year, our judges hire approximately 480 law clerks statewide. Clerkship with the New Jersey courts enhances career prospects with real-world experience, working closely with judges, prosecutors, defense attorneys, and litigators, and the support personnel of the court system while serving the public. Our panelists are here today to describe the critical work of our judicial law clerks and to provide you information on the application and hiring process. I'm honored to introduce our panel. Each panelist is going to take a few minutes to let them know a little bit about themselves. First up, we have the Honorable Judge Harold Fuller-Love Jr. of our criminal division representing the Essex County Vicinage. Judge Fuller-Love.
So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Again, my name is Judge Harold Fuller-Love Jr. I'm a judge in Essex County in the criminal division. I've been a Superior Court judge since 2016. I served for 3 years in the family division, and I've done now 2 years. I'm starting my 3rd year in the criminal division. Prior to that, from 2007 through 2016, I was a municipal court judge in several towns here in New Jersey. And prior to that, I was an assistant prosecutor in Middlesex County. Before that, I was a deputy attorney general for the state of New Jersey on the civil side, doing civil insurance fraud cases. And then to start my career, I was a judicial law clerk in Middlesex County. And at the time, back in the dark ages when I was a law clerk, I clerked for 2 judges at the same time, both of whom were sitting in the criminal. And I think the clerkship program is invaluable. Our new law clerks have started today. I'm always excited to have my new law clerks start. I'm excited to work with my law clerks every day. It's one of the best professional relationships I think a judge can have. And so I look forward to talking to all of you about that program and selling it to you. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Judge Fuller-Love. Next, we have the Honorable Judge Joan Bedrin Murray, representing our tax court of New Jersey. Judge Murray's chambers also sits in our Essex County vicinage. Judge Murray.
Thank you, Kevin. Welcome to the CUNY School of Law students. I'm really honored to be here to talk about the New Jersey Judiciary's wonderful, esteemed judicial law clerk program. I am a graduate of Muhlenberg College and then graduated from Pace University School of Law. And I will tell you, it was 1982. I started out my career as a law clerk, just like Judge Fulilov, because that is just about the best thing you can do as a new attorney. I still see my judge, who is now, you might guess, well into his 80s. And I still call him Judge. He still calls me Joan. I went into a solo law practice for many years, but I was particularly interested in serving my community, which I did for probably 20 years prior to becoming a judge. I was the president of Head Start of Morris County, New Jersey. And I don't know if many of you are familiar with that, but it's a preschool program for children that are at or below the poverty line. Wonderful federal program. I went on to serve my Board of Education for several years, and I sat on my county's tax board, County Board of Taxation, which led me to earn a tax assessor certificate, which ultimately led me to the tax court of New Jersey, which was my long-term goal. However, soon after getting appointed to the tax court in December of 2017, I was reassigned to the Bergen vicinage, which is Bergen is a county in New Jersey, I'm sure you all know. And I was assigned to the general equity division, doing foreclosures, probate work, and chancery matters. So you can imagine the shock to my very first law clerk, who thought she was going to be a tax court law clerk and suddenly was thrust into the very exciting, tumultuous, and docket heavy world of foreclosures. So after serving in the Bergen vicinage for 2.5 years, I was reassigned back to the tax court full-time January of 2021. And David Hahn, who you see on the screen, is my current law clerk. He caught the tail end of the general equity assignment and now is very happily doing tax court matters. But overall, I have to say that I'm so lucky that I got to experience the various courts and to hear the various types of cases that are so different. But I will say that starting out my career as a law clerk in our system really made all the difference in the world. Law clerks are an integral part of the judge's day-to-day life. Our law clerks are our partners, and life would not be the same without them. And it's a wonderful learning experience. Look forward to hearing your questions.
All right, thank you, Judge Murray. So I'm thrilled that we have both Judge Fulilov and Judge Murray's law clerks joining us today as they're finishing up their clerkship terms over the next week or so. First, we have Judge Fulilov's clerk, Merlins Albrecht from St. John's University School of Law. Merlins.
Yes, how's everybody doing? As stated, my name is Romulans Albrecht, and I did go to St. John's University School of Law. I'm actually a Brooklyn native, born and raised, and I intend to go back there after my clerkship to be a public defender at Brooklyn Defenders. And I look forward to sharing my experience with all of you.
All right, thank you, thank you. And last but not least, we also are joined by Judge Murray's law clerk, David Hahn from Rutgers University Law. David.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Hahn. Just like Romalins, well, not like Romalins, I lived a long life in Long Island. I went to college in Stony Brook University. I studied applied math and statistics. A few years after that, I decided to go to law school. I went to Rutgers Law and interned with Judge Murray during my time at Rutgers Law and with another judge for a family part, actually. After graduating, I wanted to get a law clerkship and Judge Murray and I, we've already created that kind of a relationship. So I was very lucky to become her law clerk. And this past year has been a blast. So any questions would be great if you'd like to ask.
All right. Well, thank you, law clerks and judges, for those introductions. So now that you learned a little bit about, today's panelists, let's jump right into our discussion with a question for Merlins. What is it like to work as a judicial clerk in New Jersey courts?
Well, it's a great experience, honestly. We do a lot, to be honest, to be completely honest, but it's not like, it's not what I would call a dull moment at any given time. You are always on your toes. You're doing a lot of problem solving, these are kind of things that you're gonna have to know becoming an attorney. And, knowing how to juggle different assignments and always trying to figure out how to solve a problem that comes your way that you never expected. So that's been my experience largely, getting the hang of it, getting the swing of it, just really being up on my game, so to speak, to try to really be out there, to try to really do the work that needs to be done. And I think, honestly, I'm better off for it.
Gotcha. All right, good. David, I guess describe the primary duties of a law clerk.
Primary duties of a law clerk, at least in the tax courts, is to handle the motions, right? Motions come in every motion cycle. We often have more than a dozen of different types of motions, like motions to dismiss or motions to compel discovery, summary judgment motions, things of those sorts that you probably remember from civil procedures. And, we have to do the legal research. We write writers for every motion, writers meaning the legal analysis given the facts of the case. And after we do a full case analysis, we come down with a decision for each motion and they go out. Another big part of it related to motions is we handle all the communications between attorneys, and it's, I guess, appellate law clerks and maybe Supreme Courts, they don't maybe deal as much as we do with the attorneys on the trial level. But here we take phone calls a lot, we talk to them, we get to know a lot of the attorneys and the law firms that are in the field, which is, I think, it gives an interesting perspective.
Gotcha, good. Judge Fulilove, the criminal division handles many types of cases. What types of cases do you handle?
Again, anything that violates the 2C, which is the criminal statute here in New Jersey. In New York, we have things that you guys call, you may think of as misdemeanors. In New Jersey, they're called disorderly persons offenses or petty disorderly persons offenses. But primarily, we're dealing with felonies, drug cases, assaults, homicide. Unfortunately, the horrible things that human beings do to one another, those are the cases we deal with. The last year has been difficult because we've only had one trial in Essex County since March of 2020. We typically will have 5 trials going per week, and we've had one since March of 2020. But we do a lot of motion practice with a lot of constitutional issues. And my law clerk will do the research on that. Was the stop constitutionally valid? There's a motion to suppress that's been filed. Was the evidence that was recovered the fruit of the poisonous tree, and should it be suppressed? And if it's suppressed, therefore, will it be dismissed? Was the identification procedure used by the police a proper one? So this is what we call a Wade motion to determine whether that was done correctly. Evidence rule 104, pretrial motions in terms of what would be admissible at trial, so the attorneys have an idea of what they'll be dealing with as the trial begins. And we're dealing with everything from the time of indictment through guilty plea through sentencing. On any given day, we will have, as many as 50 cases scheduled. Some will be scheduled for just status conferences so the lawyers can let me know what's going on with the case. Some will be scheduled and we know a plea will be coming. Some will be dismissals. Some will be sentencings. And so I have to be prepared for all of those eventualities. We deal with also issues of people who are accused of committing a particular act that would be a criminal act, but are they competent now to stand trial? And so I'm dealing with getting evaluations done for those individuals to see whether or not they are competent at this point, making sure reevaluations are done to see if they will ever regain competence. And if they will never regain competence, well, then what's the next step that the courts should take regarding that case? So again, we run the full gamut of anything that applies to criminal law. There's something recently I've done, it's called a TERPO. It's a temporary extreme risk protection order. And those are for cases where someone has a handgun or some type of weapon, typically a firearm. And there's a concern that because of mental health issues that they have that at that moment are so acute, whether or not that gun should be taken from them temporarily. And then within a short turnaround time, there's another hearing to determine whether or not that gun should be taken from them for an extended term, for the length of the existence of the order. Now, the people have the right to get those guns back. Typically, it deals with them getting some type of mental health treatment, showing that they've addressed some of their issues. We had one of those, I think, last Friday for a young woman who was in distress and called 3 or 4 people in her life threatening to kill herself. And she had a handgun and, she said, I have a gun. So we deal with literally, all of those issues. Unlike law school where you're dealing with fact patterns and hypotheticals, these are literal real life issues. And that's true for the tax court. That's true for the civil division. It's true for the appellate division, for the Supremes. It's no longer Old Town Mall that's made up in a fact pattern. It's the literal lives of not just in criminal defendants, but their wives, husbands, children, family members, and then victims as well. The victim of that assault, the victim of that theft. And so you're dealing, the consequences are far greater because we're dealing with the real life consequences for people. And quite often, I have 250 cases currently on my docket. You cannot lose sight of the fact that for each of those people, whether it's a defendant or a family member or victim, that's the only thing in their life. That's the focus of their life. They're dealing with the fact that they have this outstanding case. And so because we understand the significance to the individual and in the society at large, we treat the motions we get and the things we do with that level of gravity and importance and significance. I hope that wasn't rambling, Mr. Harmon.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, Judge. All right.
That means yes, it was rambling.
And it wasn't. All right. All right, Judge Murray, how do you interact with your law clerks and what are your expectations for your law clerk?
Well, as I said earlier, my law clerk is my partner, and I will go over everything I'm doing with the law clerk. For example, as David said, motions come in and they first go to the law clerk, who has to review them, get an idea of what the moving party is asking for, but then bring the motion in and discuss it with me. And it's very interesting because the law clerk's job is to go through all the paperwork, but not just look at the motion. The law clerk has to go into the full case jacket. And this is something that all new law clerks have to learn. It's not enough just to look at the motion by itself. You have to go into what we call the case jacket. It's really what used to be the file folder with all of the papers inside. You have to get the case down from beginning to end. It sounds a little onerous, but it's really not. You have to look at that motion in the context of everything that's gone on the case thus far. Maybe the moving party made the same motion a month ago or a year ago, whatever. So the law clerk has to really know the file because the judge has to know the file. And then the law clerk has to go and does not need to reinvent the wheel. There's plenty of case law. There are plenty of motions that are garden variety. But it always helps to read through other motions that other judges might have done. But ultimately, the law clerk will be doing research. And sometimes that research will be just fine, but the law clerk's solution will be wrong. The answer will be wrong. And that's where it gets to be a learning experience for the judge and the clerk, because we can sit down and really pull the case apart and see what's the right answer here. Sometimes the law clerk comes up with the right answer and the judge didn't really know it. So it's a joint experience, and you're partners. Not only are you partners with each other, the law clerk has to be in sync with the rest of the team, the secretaries, the management office, in our case, we have a tax management office. Everybody works together as a team and we're a family. And there's got to be respect going in all different directions. And that's a hallmark of working in our system. There's respect, there's courtesy. But in any event, really the law clerk just works with the judge on everything. If the judge has to do an oral decision on the record, I will work with David, for example, on the oral decision. We'll go over everything together. In my chambers, my law clerks always accompany me into court. The law clerk does not stay behind. I know other judges do things differently, but I always insist that my law clerks accompany me into conferences with attorneys, listen in on phone conferences, and sit in on any motions. Of course, this past year, they've been virtual, but the law clerk is a part of everything that goes on.
Gotcha. Good, good. So to all my attendees out there, if you do have a question, raise your hand. I have a bunch of questions that I can ask. But if you have something specific you want to ask, feel free to raise your hands.
And Kevin, can I just piggyback on what
Sure.
Judge Murray said? Law school prepares you for it's the study of law, but this clerkship is such an apprenticeship that you get to see hands-on what actually happens. You know, I agree with Judge Murray. My law clerks, I always have them sit on all my conferences with attorneys, because I don't want, when you guys are out practicing, the first time you witness a judge's conference with a lawyer, your first time doing that be the first time that you ever saw it. You're going to want to see how judges conduct themselves, how lawyers should and should not conduct themselves. As a law clerk, you will learn just as much seeing really good lawyers as you will seeing really bad lawyers, because you'll say, oh, I saw the judge's reaction. I make sure I'll never do that in my practice. You also get that chance to have the insight of a judge. The judge is going to see the moving papers and you'll see the judge's reaction. I don't like when they're presented this way, when the argument is presented this way. I do like how the argument is presented this way. And as much as our judges are all individuals, it's not a homogenous group, you'll start to see what judges do and don't react to. You'll also have the experience of dealing with attorneys, and you'll have negative and positive reactions to attorneys. So when you are practicing and you're dealing with judges' chambers, you'll have that in your mind to say, I like when attorneys approach things this way. I don't like when attorneys approach things this way. And it's the type of thing that law school can't teach you. And you have the benefit of having that experience, and having that experience in a way where you almost can't fail. Because everything Judge Murray or I do, it has her name or my name on it, not any of yours. And so to a certain extent, that anonymity is freedom. You can be intellectually curious. You can say to your judge, Judge, is this idea I have about this case kind of out there? Or am I thinking in the right way? And you can get your barometer of how you should approach things. And it's okay to do that kind of intellectual exploration, because there's not a client who will be suffering a consequence from that. And the judge can either say, no, you're on the right track, or reel you back in. But getting that type of insight and picking our brains, not that our brains are better, we're just more experienced, is something I think really law clerks, it's a benefit that law clerks get that people who don't participate in the clerkship process, they miss out on, and they may not even realize they miss out on it, but they do. I can tell when attorneys have had clerkships, even if they've been out practicing for 10, 15 years, because their approach to just chambers is different, to the secretary, to the judge. It's just an invaluable experience.
Gotcha. All right, so for my law clerks, what is one thing you now know that you didn't know when you started? Who wants to go? Rollins?
I honestly have to think about that, because there's a lot that I've learned over the year. And especially since our clerkship was a bit different than what a typical one would be, because we were virtual. So a lot of the stuff that I had to do, I had to learn, I guess I didn't know I needed to know it. So I suppose a lot of the tech aspects of it, with the emails and the Zoom setups, maybe I wish I was a bit more adept with that at the time. I also wish I knew what eCourts was before starting. I've never had to deal with eCourts before, so
well, explain to them what eCourts is, because they're not going to know what that is either.
Right. So eCourts is it's kind of like an online database for motions. So when you have motions, violation of probations, violations of monitoring, they all come through e-courts, and that's where you're able to schedule them, where you're able to view them, see the next scheduled dates, adjourn them, all of these things. But e-courts has other functions such as pretrial services. You can put in orders in e-courts for pretrial monitoring, for example. So if the person's going to be on home detention, or just a certain level of checking in with an officer a couple of weeks out of the month, you can edit that there. So e-courts has a lot of functions, not all of which I am adept with because I didn't really know about them before. And as time goes on, even now, I'm learning new things about e-courts that I didn't know before. So definitely, if I had the ability to become a master at e-courts before starting, I would totally have done that.
All right, David, same question for you.
Well, thanks to Romerlin's, I had 2 more minutes to think about it. First of all, I now know the benefits of treating law clerks with respect. As a practicing attorney, some attorneys have treated me with less respect than maybe the secretary or other staff that were with Judge Murray for longer. And that as a human, that impacts me. And I do a lot for Judge Murray. So it's going to eventually impact, not totally, but a little bit, just emotionally. So I know that. And
judges know if you treat their staff poorly.
yes.
And that won't
yes,
affect the merits of your motion, but you may get a stern talking to, and maybe you don't get that adjournment you'd like to, because you were less than courteous to the judge's staff, because I treat my staff as an extension of myself. So if you're rude to my law clerk or my secretary, it's no different than being rude to me.
Right. Absolutely. And, just a lot about tax law, just in general, just because I was in the tax court. I had no idea about tax law before coming on. And knowing about something like this is, I think, useful just in life, just in living my life in New Jersey. I'm going to be placed in a law firm in New Jersey. So my life is here now for the foreseeable future. And I think it's a good thing to know how things work. I didn't know anything about property assessments or how all these other different parts of tax law comes into play in life. So that was a great experience.
Gotcha. Now, Judge
Hey,
Murray,
Kevin, if I could piggyback on what David just said about the respect aspect of it, that is something like I know most people don't go in thinking they're hot shots and they can talk to anybody any which way, for most people. But being in the clerkship, thankfully I haven't had a lot of people be rude to me, but there have been some. And I know how that makes me feel, like David said, and it kind of does affect how you interact with that person. Maybe if you had to pick between 2 things to talk to the judge about, you'll pick another attorney's matter over that one because this person's a jerk. So even if you're nice to them anyways, it's not going to matter. They're going to still be a jerk. Whereas this other person's been nice to you the entire time. And, they're like, hey, can you please help me out? So you're like, yeah, they said, please. Judge, I have this important, there's another one. When we finish this, we can get to that one. So it's like these little things, how you treat people really, really matters.
Gotcha. Good. Now, Judge Murray, we've touched on a little bit about how different clerkship was for this term. Now, hopefully moving forward, things are improving and stuff like that. How do you see the difference between, this year's term as opposed to what's going to happen, hopefully for the next term?
That's a great question, because the next clerk coming in, young man named Saad, who's busy at work today, learning the ropes, it is incredibly fortunate because now 6 of the tax court judges are in Newark together, and we are all on the same floor, judges, law clerks, secretaries. So that's a much different experience than the one David had. I'm sorry about that. And I said that to him last week. I wish he had had a full-blown in-person experience, because my other law clerks would meet with the various judges' clerks in the lunchroom every day. Even if they brown bagged it, they would take their lunches down to the cafeteria, and I would go down to get something to eat. And I would see all of the vicinage law clerks sitting around a big table, laughing, having a great time. And that's really a big part of it. And that's what, starting this year, hopefully, the law clerks will have. It's going to be communal. We're all going to be together. I'll get to talk to my judge colleagues, and I'll get to know the other law clerks, which is another important point. Every year, the judges in a division get to know all the other judges' law clerks, and they're very willing to give advice to those law clerks, even though it's not yours. All the judges are interested in the advancement of the law clerks. It's like it's almost like they're your children in a way, because you're there to mentor them, make sure you send them out into the legal world fit and ready to go. And the law clerks benefit from everything the various judges have to offer. So that's a really big part of it. And I'm sad that the law clerks this term and really last term missed out on that, the mingling and the learning. And it's sad for the judges as well.
Right, right. So Judge Fully-Love, what do you look for in a potential law clerk, and any tips for the interview process?
Certainly. A basic tip for the interview process, because in New Jersey, your applications are online. I do not read cover letters if they say "Dear Judge." Okay? Simple thing. Put the judge's name on. Spell the judge's name correctly. Don't just use spell check. Read it over. I had an application for someone who wanted to, I don't recall if they were, I think it was a law clerk application, but they spelled the governor of New Jersey's name wrong. Well, okay. If in asking me for a job, you're not exhibiting a certain level of thoroughness, then I'm concerned what you'll do when you actually get the job. So I'm not going to look at that. For the people who I interview, they all have good, decent GPAs. If you didn't start law school strongly, that's okay. I'd like to see progress. So if your first semester, you had to figure it out, it's very different from undergrad. I was an English major. The way they wanted me to write in undergrad is very different than the way they want you to write in law school. It took a second for me to figure out, this is how I have to do it. I didn't need you to have a 4.0 out the gate, but I like to see the progress. Even if you started slow, how did you turn it around? You figured things out. That's someone who's worked hard. I like that. Generally, all of the law clerks are going to be of a certain baseline level of intelligence, of skill, of GPA. But what I also look for is, this is a person who I'm going to be working very closely with for a year. Am I going to want to spend time around this person, right? And so what I recommend to you is live a well-rounded, fulfilling life, because that's going to make you interesting to a judge. One of my law clerks, my second law clerk ever, was a Division I soccer player from California at an art school. I said, well, that's really, I was like, that's really fascinating to talk about. Well, come in for the interview. That's different. Let's talk. My law clerk, who will be following behind Romerlin's, she played, and it's not all about sports, but she played high school football. Okay. She likes doing mud runs, which is something I've done before, like a Tough Mudder. She climbed Mount Kilimanjaro between undergrad and law school. It's like, wow, this is a person with some really interesting life experiences I could learn something from. This is someone who has some fascinating conversations for me to have. These are people who've actually gone out and lived life. That person who is 100% focused on the law, is great. But, if I have two people with equal GPAs and one of them does fun, interesting stuff, reads interesting books, if you like sci-fi, I'm a comic book nerd. That's great. Awesome. Tell me about that. But those things you do to make you a well-rounded person may strike a chord with the judge that's not going to be in the judge's resume or CV that you'll never know about. So if you, in addition to your excellence, if you thoroughly live your life, that's going to be appealing to the judge. Absolutely. And that's really what I do look for. And again, preparation. One last law clerk story. I had a law clerk who during the interview process, I asked her a question and she immediately gave me a canned answer. And I was like, okay, whatever. Asked the second question, boom, another answer I could tell was prepared. It was a speech, word for word. And my first inclination was to say, well, you know what? I don't know who this person is. This may not be genuine. You know, this is a little too staged. And then my next thought was, wow, this woman is so prepared. She prepared answers for all of the possible questions I could ask and was ready for anything I could ask. And instead of being something that made me adverse to her, it made me really look at her resume differently and the interview differently and said, that's somebody I need. I need someone who's going to come in every day, not trying to improv the problems of the day or emotion, but who's going to have that level of preparation. And that really switched it around in a way I didn't expect it to. So, you know, that preparation is great too. Know who your judge is, research your judge, Google your judge, but Google your judge and get it right. I had someone who asked me about a case that I worked on that wasn't mine, it was my dad's. So, you know, check your facts.
Gotcha. All right. So Judge, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have not hired your 22-23 law clerk just yet.
Correct. I have not.
Okay. All right. So for every attendee on the call, if you're a former female high school football player, you run butters, you know, you got an in.
To the credit of that law clerk, she has also had a great GPA, interviewed really well, and is obviously brilliant.
Right.
And so if you played football, but you, you know, yeah, that's not all it takes. I promise you.
Don't worry about it.
I promise you.
All right. Judge Murray, how do you go about, I guess, mentoring your law clerks?
Mentoring is something that I really like to do. So it's very important. It's a day-to-day process. Again, by keeping the law clerk close and going over everything that you're going to do, and as Judge Fulilov mentioned earlier, the law clerk needs to know what you find promising about a brief that you get or an argument that you get, and what you are unsatisfied with. So for example, I know I say to David all the time, don't do that. And it's just as simple as can be. An attorney will call up or make a request or maybe hand papers in late without asking for permission to file an opposition late, or getting consent of an adversary, or a million other things. And I just turn to David and I say, don't do that. When you go out, please don't go to your law firm and do anything like that, because it's not appropriate and I don't want to send you out like that. On the other hand, when an attorney comes in and is just professional and does a great job or writes a great brief, I'll say, do it like that. Because it's true. The judge has to point out excellent behaviors versus, you know, mediocre behaviors to the law clerk. And also simple things like how an attorney talks on the phone to the judge. Is there a note of disrespect? And as David mentioned before, and I'm so sad to hear, you know, very often, not very often, but from time to time, attorneys can be a little gruff with the law clerks. And by the way, on the other hand, there are law clerks who do the same to the bar. And that's also something that you don't want to have happen. You know, the law clerk feels that he's got the judge's imprimatur and is going to be maybe a little bit bossy or whatever. So we can't have that. Courtesy is number one, because what the law clerk has to know as part of the mentoring process is that we are nothing but public servants. And, you know, you can almost say you're in the customer service business, although that's really reducing it to a motto, whatever. But you're just serving the public, and you have to be expeditious, and you have to be courteous, and you have to lead by example. So you can tell your law clerk 30 different things and then turn around and do the opposite. But you know, you have to lead by example. Be a good person, do your job, prepare for your arguments, and have the law clerk be a full part of that, and treat your staff well. And the law clerk gets to walk away a year later knowing how to behave as a young attorney in a very challenging world.
And all of you should also understand, in terms of mentorship, your judges network can become your network. When you go out, because the clerkship is only 1 year, my law clerks will either call me for job recommendations, or I'll plug them into people I know. I mean, Romulan's next year is going to have a job. The job he always wanted, really, is a public defender in Brooklyn. I had a good friend who used to be a public defender in Brooklyn. So I said, Romulan's, you two should talk. See what the office is like. See what the interview process is like. The judges we've gotten to where we are, and we happen to know people. And it's almost certain we know people in the area where you want to work. Or in the alternative, if we don't, we're a great resume reference for you. When you go for that job, you worked for a judge and you have a judge who's saying good things about you, that carries more weight. So it's not just, even if the judge doesn't know people in your area, and they probably do, you're going to have, that judge kind of in your back pocket, giving you kind of the judicial stamp of approval. So that's another thing that we can do for you. Very many of my law clerks have gotten positions where I've been fortunate enough to help them in some way, shape, or form, even years after the clerkship has ended. And again, as Judge Murray said, as I said, that's a big part of the mentorship. We want to see you guys be successful, and we do what we can to facilitate that process for you.
Judge Murray, right back at you. How important is it having, I guess, a tax background for employment in your?
Excuse me. That's so funny that you asked that question, Kevin, because I wanted to interject. You don't need a tax background. Now, I know CUNY School of Law, I don't believe has a tax clinic. And I don't even know if you teach state or local taxation. I know that you have a wonderful clinic program. And I looked at all the clinics that you have, and it's overwhelming and quite wonderful. So I know that many of the law students at CUNY want to serve the public, but you can do that in any court. That's what I always wanted to do, and I was able to do it my entire career. So if you're a good match with the judge, even if that judge is in tax court, maybe you think, well, gee, I don't really like math. But that's not what it's about. It's about research and case law and very interesting issues. And it clearly is different than criminal court, where, as Judge Fulilov correctly said, that's the big thing in your life every day. Your criminal case is really the most overwhelming thing. But in tax court, there are issues that are important to people. They're not life-threatening. However, you don't have to have a tax background. You have to come to the judge and in your interview say, I might be interested in this. I would like to know more about what you do. And I just want to be a law clerk, and it's fine. I'm just trying to think, 2, 3, one of my law clerks went on to be a tax attorney, but David's going to be doing labor law. My other law clerk also is doing labor law, and and another one went into labor law. So I have one that went into tax, but it really makes no difference because it's the same experience. When you're in law school, just like when I was in law school, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to be a judge, but between law school and that, I really didn't know what I wanted to focus on, because law school is different than practicing law. And so to get a judicial clerkship, as long as you can get along with the judge and you're eager to do the work and you're flexible, because the judge's assignment could change on a dime, just like happened to me and my law clerk, and she did a wonderful job, by the way. We were new at it together. So you just have to be flexible and motivated, and you have to have a strong character and want to be a great law clerk and attorney. So I would welcome applications from any student, regardless of lack of a tax background. Most students don't have a tax background. Maybe they took a state taxation course at their law school. But that's really it. That's the extent of it.
Gotcha. David, what was your thought process when you decided to, go for a judicial clerkship, as opposed to starting, in the real world directly to outside of school.
Right. So the law firm that extended an offer after a summer associateship strongly recommended having a law clerkship experience. So taking that as more than a suggestion, I was, rightfully looking for clerkships, and thankfully Judge Murray extended me the offer. Now, just coming out of undergrad with an applied math background, I thought blindly, without knowing anything about the law, I thought maybe tax would be a good fit for me. And the only tax course that was available at Rutgers Law at the time was federal income tax, and I took that. But of course, we didn't use any federal income tax because we were New Jersey state tax law. So I was in the same shoes as any other applicant without any tax background. I was coming in without anything. But anyways, the law clerkship was, for some people, they think, oh, maybe by not going into private practice right away, it's a roundabout. But I have so much faith and confidence that this is the shortcut to becoming a seasoned, good, well-off attorney. And after this year, I now have more confidence of saying this.
Right. All right. Merlin's, how did you prepare, for your interview with Judge Foley Love?
I'm curious to hear this.
Well, I'm not really big on the Googling. I did a primary lookup, didn't find much on Google. I found out later why Judge Foley Love scrubs himself off the internet. But yeah, I didn't find much. But I'm not much of a Googler because but it's a personal belief. I'm not by any means saying for anyone else to do the same. I just feel like when I'm going to meet somebody, I want to have my impression of them that way and not tailor my personality to kind of match theirs just so I can get the job. I want it to be a genuine match. And so Judge Foley Love was not, he was going to be the first judge, but he was not the first judge I interviewed for. And after that first interview with that judge, going in with Judge Foley Love, I had more of a sense of, okay, so number one is to be myself. So that's the first thing. So I knew I had to be honest and open and 100% myself. And I, of course, knew my resume front and back. I knew what I did. I understood my role in every job because I did it. It sounds weird saying know your resume because, it's something that you lived. But a lot of people don't think about it like that. They're trying to, be perfect and have the perfect answer. But I know everything I did. I could talk to you about any job I did and explain exactly what my day was like without trying to make it sound like a piece of paper.
Right.
And so that's what I went in doing. I also I reviewed my writing sample and went over that. I thought about questions that the judge could ask me. I know my transcript could bring about a few questions like, I see you got this grade in this class, what happened there? So I was prepared for that kind of stuff too. But like the most thing I was prepared for was just like constantly reminding myself to be myself, because I feel like law school spent a lot of time telling me to be a certain type of way. You had to fit a certain type of mode. You had to be in the top 10%. You had to be on law review. You had to do mock trial. You had to do moot court. They wanted you to be like a cookie cutter kind of way. So you spend a lot of time in law school not being genuinely you. So going in with Judge Foley Love, I went in with the intention to be myself. And I remember in the interview, at the end, Judge Foley Love was like, is there anything else you'd like to say? And I didn't have to say this, but I remember saying, I was like, yeah, Judge, the interview process, I think, works both ways. You're trying to feel me out and see what kind of person I am. But while I'm interviewing with you, I'm trying to look at the kind of person you are too. And I see the type of person I could work with. That is probably something they'd probably tell you not to say something like that in an interview. But I genuinely believed it and I genuinely felt it because after talking with Judge Foley Love, I'm like, yeah, this guy's cool. You know, I can work with this guy. You know, and that's very important in a clerkship. The judge needs to know if they can work with you, and you need to know if you can work with the judge, because you don't want to be in a nightmare pairing.
Right.
So, you know, like I was myself, and I feel like that helped. And Judge Fully Love, I hope, did not feel bamboozled when I got here, and he knew exactly who he was getting, who he was going to work with.
He was a completely
And
different person. I didn't even recognize him when he came in.
Very nice.
Yeah, so that's how I prepared.
All right, good, thank you. So again, anybody have any questions out there, please raise your hand. Anyone? Or there you go, I saw that. Hi, Val. Give me 1 second to unmute you. All right. You can unmute yourself, Val, there you go. And I'll come right back to you, Hillary.
Hi, thank you for speaking. This was a great talk. I'm in the the application process now. I'm a 3L, and there are just so many judges, and I'm having trouble with figuring out how to write all these cover letters and things, how to make them all personal, how to apply to just giving myself the best range while not just spewing paper at everyone and keeping it personal. So do you have any advice on how to do that?
Some of your cover letter is going to be repeated for everyone because you're telling us about yourself, right? And you're not going to change who you are. To Romulan's point, you know, be 100% authentically, genuinely who you are. But what you may want to do is tell the judge what it is about that particular judge that interests you in interviewing. Is it geographic? I'm interested in working in the Essex County area. Could it be the type of clerkship? I'm interested in doing tax law. Is there something that ties you to that particular judge other than, hey, I'm finishing law school, I have debt, I need some income, hire me. So whatever it is that when you look at the judge makes you want to interview with that judge, put that there, put that in there. Judge Murray, I thought it was fascinating that I've Googled you, and some of the work you've done in the past was fascinating. And I have, similar, I also am interested in those things. So I think it would be good to work with a judge who's done the things that I want to do in your practice. Or again, it could be geographic. I've always wanted to live near the Jersey Shore, and you're in Monmouth County, Judge. I think that would be cool. I don't think that honesty won't hurt you with a judge who you want to work with.
Can I just add something? I agree completely. And let me say, I can't tell you how many letters we get. Dear Judge, and I know Judge Fullalove mentioned this earlier, you have to use the judge's name. And not only that, sometimes we get applications from students at Pace Law School, where I am an alumna, and the applicant never says, I know that you went to Pace Law School, and just a little personal touch there. And I always say to my law clerk, is there a mention that I went to Pace Law? Because it's so easy to find. It's there. All you have to do is, type in the judge's name. So it's easy to personalize it. But it has to have the judge's name in the salutation. Otherwise, once I got to the court administrator or something like that. So even though it's difficult, it's laborious, you have to personalize it just a little.
Gotcha. All right, Hillary. Hillary? Oh,
hear me?
there you go.
Hi, judges. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for speaking with us today. My name is Hillary Brown, and I was just wondering, I know Judge Murray touched on this a little bit, but are all of the clerkship positions for 22 to 23 remote, in person, or is it particular to the court that you're applying to?
Judge Fullalove?
I was deferring. That's an excellent question because we don't know the answer, quite frankly. With COVID, things are very fluid, as you can imagine. So, for example, and I think the administrative office of the courts covers all of New Jersey courts. However, there are certain aspects that are individual to the what they call the vicinage, which is essentially the county. So I can tell you in Essex County, in the Essex vicinage, and I believe this is statewide, all of the judges were required to be in the building every day as of August 1. For New Jersey's judiciary, they require all judges and judiciary employees to either be vaccinated or submit to weekly testing, if not bi-weekly testing.
Weekly.
It's weekly, okay, weekly testing. Things like surges and variants could change what we're doing and how we're doing it, quite frankly. And so that's really going to be a question. You know, I don't know that there's one answer to that question because we don't know what's going to happen. I will say the judiciary has been very kind of adept on its feet to transition from March of 2020 to being in court full time to literally April 1, 2020, 100% remote, but still continuing with court operations. I have not had a day off because of the quarantine or outbreak. We've still been working. I got a court-issued laptop and I was at home. My secretary took her desktop home. I guess it's a long-winded way of saying I don't know. Sorry.
I think that would have been my answer. Exactly.
Yeah.
I just let you guys say it. All right, Sonia.
So I actually had two quick things. First, a shout out for Judge Murray. I work in Head Start after college and I'm a 2L student. And this is the first time in 2 years I heard someone in the legal profession talk about Head Start. So that totally made my day. And for 2L students interested in family court, what classes or opportunities could you pursue in law school to get, that would be helpful with the application process and also when you become a clerk in family court?
None of the clerks currently are in family. I worked in family as a judge for a couple of years. And I can tell you that most judges appreciate that law students are in the process of figuring out what it is they want to do as a practice. So if you've taken 1 or 2 family law courses and it sparked an interest, you know, that can be enough. When I was a family judge, one of my law clerks was not sure if she wanted to go the family law route or go, you know, banking, and, you know, had some of both in her resume, both internships, clerked with me, realized that though we got along, family court wasn't for her. So now she's going the banking route. So it's okay if you take 1 or 2 courses just to dip your toe in things that you might find interesting. I will say this, most judges treat excellence as a transferable skill. So Judge Murray's looking at law clerks. I'm sure David's resume was excellent. So whether he had a tax background or not didn't matter. We look at, you know, what have you done with everything that's been placed in front of you in terms of coursework? If you've done excellent work with everything you've been given thus far, I'm going to presume you'll do excellent work with whatever I give you. And so, you know, excellence is the key, not necessarily a particular course. I mean, it's helpful. I mean, if you want a family law clerkship and you tell me you've always wanted to be a family lawyer and I don't see family law anywhere on your coursework, that's going to cause me a red flag. But for example, if you're a criminal or a civil clerk, you've all had to take criminal procedure and civil procedure. You know, if you tell Judge Murray, I've always wanted to be a tax attorney, but you have a school that offers tax courses and she's not seen any on your resume or internships, I'm sure that's going to give her a red flag. But again, the key is just excellence more than anything. And if you're going to tell me and try to sell me or another judge on the fact that you've always wanted to do one particular thing, I need to see that particular thing on your resume. Romlin said, Judge, I really want to do defense work. I really want to be a public defender. That was on his resume, that he had that experience.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right, any more questions from our audience? All right, Stephanie, did you have any questions come to you?
No, let me just check one more time.
Oh, I did have one for Judge Murray.
Yeah, one about for general equity. Yeah.
Right, right. What are I guess the hallmarks of a successful general equity clerk application?
Wow. I think it would just have to be overall a very good application, a strong resume, good grades, because general equity can be very challenging. Chancery Division, also known as the Chancery Division in New Jersey, is sometimes known, at least in Bergen, we called it the emergency room of the courthouse, because every day is an emergency. Nobody's going there. Nobody's going there to collect damages that occurred to them in the past. They're going to stop damage from occurring right this very minute. So it's a very, very interesting place to work. When I was there for 2.5 years. My clerks and I probably worked easily until 7 o'clock every night. And there's just an awful lot of work to do. And, we had every type of emergency you can imagine, even of a foreclosure nature. We did a lot of sheriff sales and evictions. On another note, we had business breakups. We had applications for guardianships and the temporary guardianships that had to be, where guardians had to be appointed right away. Family members saying that money was being taken out of their accounts, life support situations, everything you can imagine. It was really the most interesting place you could be. So given that, I would say if you want to be a general equity clerk, you have to have quite a good record, and you have to be organized, and you just have to show the judge that you've got the skill set. Doesn't mean that you took a course in probate law, because again, you're going to learn that on the job. But you have to really, just like with any other clerkship, I would say you have to convince the judge that you're going to do a good job and you're up to the task.
Gotcha.
I would guys, just to sell New Jersey one more time. I know you guys are all at a law school in New York. I have nothing against New York, though I'm a lifelong Jersey boy. I want you to understand as well, a clerkship in New Jersey does not mean that you cannot work in another state. I've had 5 law clerks, including Rollins. 3 of them left their clerkship here in New Jersey and got jobs in New York City or state. 1 got a job in Florida, and only 1 is working in New Jersey. So be mindful that a clerkship in New Jersey does not mean you are conscripted to life in New Jersey, although we would happily take you on because we like attorneys. But keep that in mind if you're interested in a clerkship. You can still go anywhere. Like I said, I have 3 in New York, 1 in Florida, 1 in New Jersey. So you can skills are transferable.
Right. And that, I'm sorry.
No, Judge, please.
Oh, well, and having that experience and having it on your resume is important anywhere in the country. I have 3 prior law clerks who also work out of state, and they have great jobs. One of my first law clerk is now corporate counsel to some big tech company. I don't even know the name of it, but she's doing great. She's in-house counsel, and she's working in Philadelphia. And I believe that her experience working for the court system was very important to her moving forward. Our court system is known as an excellent one, and our judicial clerkship program is really phenomenal. I served in it myself. It was great, blankety blank years ago, actually 39 years ago. And it was a great year for me. I'll never forget it. And it helped fulfill my career aspirations. So you can't go wrong.
I just wanted to say thank you to both judges for saying and letting us New York folks understand what really goes on.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it, totally.
Right, so I see we're a little bit past our hour. So I have some final important dates to share. If everybody can see my screen. So let's see. So what I'd like to do, I'd like to thank our panel and everyone in the audience for participating today. I'll be sending up a follow-up email to everyone with additional information in response to any remaining questions. So next steps for our 3L students, still looking for judicial clerkships. There are a number of vacancies available for our 2022-23 court terms that start in August 2022. Some of our judges, they like to hire right when application process starts in June. Some like to hold off a little bit, like our Judge Fully-Love, until now, and some like to hold off until next year. So there will be time. And throughout this, the ending of this year into next year as well, I will be sending information out to Stephanie in regards to other opportunities that are still available. So just keep on the lookout if you're still looking. For any 2L students, there are some key dates that you should be aware of. The recruitment cycle for the August 2023-24 clerkship term tentatively starts May 30th, 2022. That's when we send out our notice of vacancy or our job description when that's posted more than a year in advance. Applicants will be able to start applying to these positions on June 13th. And justices and judges may begin scheduling interviews and making offers of employment on June 20th. And these dates are tentative. We may start a week or early or late. But so far, these are the dates. So to apply to a judicial clerkship, visit our website, www.njcourts.gov, and go to the law clerk recruitment page. Okay. If you have any questions for me, you can send them directly to me at kevin.harmon@njcourts.gov or to our law clerk, FAQ@njcourts.gov. So again, thank you to our panelists, Judge Fully-Love, Judge Murray, Mr. Alberic, Mr. Hahn, and the audience up there at CUNY Law for participating in today's seminar. We hope you consider a judicial clerkship with the New Jersey courts. Be on the lookout for additional content that's coming soon. Be safe. Have a great day. The work of the courts continues.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.